Promised. Steve. So good. Okay. On up, Jim. Okay, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to say anything. You're not, but you can join us in Seth's place. How about that? Okay. All right. Well, good afternoon and welcome to the June crop production and WASDE briefings. My name is Lance Honig and I serve as chair of the Agricultural Statistics Board here at NASS. This briefing is for the Secretary of Agriculture and other policymakers at USDA to better understand the content and context of today's reports. We're very pleased that joining us today as Secretary Designate is Jason Hafemeister. He is the acting Deputy Undersecretary for Trade and Foreign Agricultural Affairs. So I'd like to welcome you here. Also, Joe Cooper from the Office of the Chief Economist is joining us today. Mr. Secretary, I'd like to share with you that you see a lot of faces around the room. We do have a lot of visitors with us today, including a group from the FAS Fellowship Programs Division. You may recognize some of them. Also, we've got some folks from the Office of the Chief Scientist, as well as Joe, some friends of yours from the Office of the Chief Economist. So a number of visitors indeed. Welcome to all of you. I'd also like to express our appreciation to Will Hundle sitting in the back of the room here. He is from our Austin, Texas office. He came in here to help us in preparing today's report. Before I turn things over to our presenters, I do have a few notes for our live streaming audience. The crop production and WASDE reports are considered principal federal economic indicator reports. The Office of Management and Budget provides specific guidance on how these important reports are to be released. OMB statistical policy instructs policymaking officials to refrain from making public comment regarding the content of these reports within 30 minutes of their release. Therefore, we will not be taking questions from the public during this briefing. Both NASS and World Board staff will be available for both phone and email questions. And NASS will host a social media event at 1 o'clock Eastern time this afternoon. We always strive to have everything presented at this briefing match the official record. However, should there be any discrepancy, always refer to the official published estimates. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Nick Streff. He is the acting chief of the crops branch here at NASS. Nick will be immediately followed by Dr. Mark Jekanowski. He is the chair of the World Ag Outlook Board. So Nick, the floor is yours.
All right. All right. Hello, everyone. Today I will be taking you through the June crop production report, and I will be covering updated estimates on winter wheat, hops, cherries, maple syrup, and citrus. So first, let's cover some of the data sources we have for some of our crops today. First, for winter wheat, we have our agricultural yield survey. We had a sample size of just over 2,800 with a data collection range of May 30th to June 7th. This is a producer-focused survey where we talk to farmers and ranchers and ask them what their expected winter wheat yield will be. To go along with for our egg yield survey, we also have our objective yield survey for wheat. This is where NASS samples wheat fields and conducts plant and head counts in the same field each month through the growing season. As the crop matures, wheat heads are clipped to send to our NASS objective yield lab for analysis. For June, we had 10 states in the wheat objective yield program with the total sample size of 975. Moving on to citrus. For Florida, we have some updated information. First, our row count survey, that was conducted on June 4th. And then we have updated utilization data from our Florida Citrus Administrative Committee, which provides data on the quantity of fruit packed or processed. Looking at our June egg yield survey sample sizes and how they are spread across the state at 2,800. And you will note that the states with the larger winter wheat acreages have the larger samples. Before we get into all the wheat estimates, we would like to tell you about the current condition and development of the crop. So first, the condition. This is provided by our weekly crop progress and condition report that comes out every Monday. Each line represents the percent of the wheat crop that is rated good or excellent. The red line denotes 2024. And as of June 2nd, 49% of the winter wheat crop is rated in good to excellent condition. This compares to 36% last year at this time. So an improved crop condition rating. Now, if we look at development for this wheat crop, we can see that 83% of the crop is headed. That is ahead of last year at 79% and the 5-year average of 78%. Also to note, I don't have a slide showing this, but the winter wheat harvested is at 6% nationally. However, I'd like to point out that Texas is at 33% harvested for winter wheat and Oklahoma is at 22% harvested. Now we can look at some of the updated estimates for wheat, our updated forecast. We do not have any changes for winter wheat planted or harvested acres this month. That is normal for the June crop production report. However, we do have updates for yield and production. So the US yield is forecast at 51.4 bushels per acre. This is up 0.7 bushel from last month and up 0.8 bushel from last year. Production is forecast at 1.29 billion bushels. This is up 17.2 million bushels from last month and up 47.1 million bushels from last year. Also on this slide, it denotes our 5 largest winter wheat producing states. Looking at the winter wheat yield over time back to 1995, you can see how the 51.4 bushels, our current forecast, compares. Now our next few slides are going to denote some changes at the state level. So if a state is shaded blue, that means it is increased from the previous month. If a state is shaded red, that means it's a decrease from the previous month. The darker the color, the larger the percent change. So this first slide is denoting the change, the current forecast in reference to the change from the previous month. Of note here, North Carolina is down 4 bushels from last month, Colorado down 3, Montana is up 4, and Nebraska is up 3 bushels per acre. Also on the slide, you can see Montana, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin are forecast to have record yields as of this month, and that is denoted by the pound sign. Now, if you look at similar data, but compared to the previous year, you can see that there are some larger year-over-year increases, with Oregon up 14 bushels from last year, Washington up 10, and Oklahoma up 10 bushels from last year. Now, looking at winter wheat production going back to 2015, if realized, this 1.29 billion bushels would be the highest production since 2019. And it would be the first time in recent history where we could potentially see 2 consecutive years of production increases. Moving on to some of the objective yield survey from that 10-state program that completes objective yield for winter wheat. There were 21% of the samples that were processed at the lab. This is ahead of the previous 5 years for the month of June. Note how that 21 is in there. And then also, if you look at our winter wheat objective yield data, we also provide information on heads per square foot. You can see that that's denoted by the blue line, and then the red dot would be the 10-state regional yield. That's the red dot. And for those, we have 41.9 heads per square foot is our current forecast number. And the yield for that 10-state objective yield region is forecast at 46. Breaking down the winter wheat by wheat type. First, we're looking at hard red winter wheat at 726 million bushels. That's up 3% from last month. Soft red winter wheat at 342 million bushels is down 0.5% from last month. And white winter wheat at 226 million bushels is down 1% from last month. And our final slide on winter wheat shows the NASS estimate in comparison to trade expectations. So for this slide, the blue dots represent an industry member's published estimate of the winter wheat production, and the red dot would represent the NASS estimate at this time. So the NASS forecast is 1.29 billion bushels, and you can see that fits right in line with the industry expectations. Moving on to other crops, hops. Hops acres strung for harvest are forecast at 44,500 acres, which is down 18% from last year. The states included in the NASS hop program include Idaho, Oregon, and Washington, and all three states are down from the previous year. Looking at non-citrus fruit and nuts, sweet cherries are forecast at 355,000 tons, up 0.2% from last year. Tart cherries at 222 million pounds is up 10.9% from last year. So since these crops are both measured in different units, please note the bottom left pie chart that shows sweet cherries make up over 75% of the all cherry production number. Also included in this report was maple syrup. It is forecast at 5.86 million gallons, up 21% from last year. Vermont is the largest producing maple syrup state and accounted for 53% of all U.S. production in 2024. Our final numbers for you today cover citrus. So as noted in the opening, we only have updates for citrus for Florida this month. So any changes represented change to Florida for the U.S. number. So all oranges are forecast at 2.6 million tons, up slightly from last month due to changes in Florida. So for Florida, the non-Valencia oranges are down 40,000 boxes from last month, and the Florida Valencia oranges are up 100,000 boxes from last month. For grapefruits, at 344,000 tons is down 0.3% from last month. The Florida estimate is down 10,000 boxes from last month. The lemon estimate remained unchanged from April. And looking at tangerines, forecast at 901,000 tons is down 0.3% from last month, with the Florida estimate being down 50,000 boxes from last month. Some of the upcoming reports for NASS include June 21st, cattle on feed, June 27th, hogs and pigs, June 28th, acreage, grain stocks, rice stocks, and agricultural prices, July 1st, the current agricultural industrial reports, and July 12th, the crop production report. As Lance noted, he will be hosting a stat chat later today on X at 1 p.m. Eastern. So please join him there and ask your questions about the crop report at that time. With that, thank you. And that's all NASS has for today.
Nick, good afternoon. So I will walk you through the WASDE report changes this month. So highlights, our focus really this month you're going to see is heavily focused on Northern Hemisphere wheat. We got the information on U.S. wheat production from NASS this morning, which Nick explained in a lot of detail, and we're going to focus also on Black Sea, where there's been some pretty interesting weather really throughout the growing season that's been affecting production there. Other crops, generally small changes on most of the other crops. As Nick noted, we have a lot of reports coming out at the end of this month, acreage, grain stocks. So that's going to, have a big impact on next month's WASDE, no doubt. But let's go through the commodities as we always do here, starting out with the global wheat production. Again, this is mainly a Black Sea story. You'll see fairly significant reductions in our production forecasts for Russia and Ukraine. I'm going to go through some slides explaining that in just a minute. But before we get there, I'll just also note Argentina up a little bit there. That's an area increase based on government data. European Union production down 1.5 million tons. That is primarily France. Too much rain, not enough sun, affecting production there. And Northwest Africa, a little bump in production there. That is an increase in Tunisia this month. But Russia and Ukraine, that's been the real story over the past several months. So just a real quick main winter wheat growing area for Russia identified there. Ukraine here noting as well that there are several territories here that are disputed, occupied, that where we don't forecast production. So we're really looking at these areas where most of the rest of the wheat is grown, where we can get reasonably good data. So the weather story in the Black Sea, since January, it's been very unusual, very volatile. You'll see going all the way back to the beginning of the year, starting as early as January, extremely cold. Potential concerns about winter kill there, but there was enough snow cover where winter kill didn't seem to be a concern this year. But then after that extremely cold January, had a unusually hot February. So wheat broke dormancy, started growing, cooled down again a bit in March, and then got extremely hot in April, throughout April. So the wheat got off to a really early start, a really aggressive start, and then extreme cold temperatures followed immediately in May. So freeze conditions that are raising some concerns. And now more recently, we're back into a hot and dry spell. So it's been a challenging year overall for Russia and Ukraine. This chart just gives a little bit perspective to how hot April was relative to history. All of the average temperatures ranked over the years for the past 30 years. 2024 really stands out as being far above average. This is Russia, similar in Ukraine, particularly Eastern Ukraine there. And then, so that was April, but then followed quickly by May. It got cold. Pretty widespread, extensive freezes, especially across Russia into southern Russia, around southern Russia. And the kind of the bullseye of the freeze conditions, the worst impacted area is this area around Rostov, where sustained cold temperatures were most intense, and the wheat was fairly far advanced, so we expect frost damage to be most severe in that region. And it also affected many other early emerged summer crops as well. And then now, since early May, then it turned dry as well. So it's been dry and throughout the region. If you go the further west you go, conditions were actually fairly good. So this is areas around Odessa. Got a reasonably good rain, some periods of dryness, but timely rains throughout the growing season. But then the further east you go, the drier the conditions were. Some timely rains here and there to help the crop along, but overall, these more eastern areas, extremely dry, moving into Russia, the southern district, and Rostov as well. Again, where the freeze was the worst, it was also extremely dry there as well. It's been hot the past several weeks as well. So crop is nearly set, but this late season heat could, further impact yield prospects going forward. So, given those conditions, other data we can look at, satellite imagery, VHI and NDVI shows up as relatively poor conditions. This is Russia, Ukraine as well. You can see the brown indicating relatively poor vegetation. So based on all of that, we cut our Russian production forecast 5 million tons, and so that's down 7% from last month and last year. Ukraine as well, we cut also down about 7%, 7% from last month and down about 15% from last year. So again, it's this concerns in the Black Sea region that's driving tighter production forecast for global wheat this month. Wheat global supply and use. A few things to talk about here. Beginning stocks up a bit. That's mainly updating some back year trade data. So carrying in a little bit higher stocks. Production down, we just talked about that, driven especially by lower production in the Black Sea, Russia and Ukraine, tightening up total supplies. Feed use down 4 million tons this month. Mainly lower feed use in Russia and Ukraine, reflecting lower production there. And also lower feed use in the EU, where we're expecting higher imports out of the higher exports out of the EU, tightening up supplies there, lower wheat feed use, and feed being just a little bit less competitive to other feed grains right now. Trade, global exports down 3.2 million tons. That again is mainly lower exports out of Russia and Ukraine, given the tighter supplies there, partially offset by increased exports by the EU and the United States, which we'll talk about next slide. Ending stocks tightening up. That's mainly tighter supplies in the EU. So U.S. balance sheet, production change, incorporating the new data we got from NASS this morning. So production up 17 million bushels. Exports up as well, forecast up 25 million bushels this month. And that mainly reflects lower Black Sea supplies, competitive opportunity for U.S. exports there. Season average market prices for the old crop. It's not noted on here, but I'll just note currently $7 per bushel. That we lowered that 10 cents per bushel just based on recent data. It was $7.10 last month, but for the new crop year, forecasted $6.50 per bushel. We raised that 50 cents this month just based on recent data and tighter U.S. and global supplies. Moving into rice, not a whole lot going on here to talk about. A few changes on the back here, just updating based on recent data. Two, I'll point out, Brazil reduced production there, 200,000 tons. That reflects the recent flooding in southern Brazil, Rio Grande do Sul, where most of the rice in Brazil is produced. Most of it was already harvested when the flooding began, but nevertheless, data suggests that production will be down because of that flooding. India raised 3 million tons. That's official government data, the third advanced estimate from India. 137 million ton crop in India. That would be a new record for them. And as you can see, we expect that record production to carry through into the new crop year as well. So in terms of the rice global balance sheet, beginning stocks up a little bit, 1.9 million tons. That is mainly reflecting that higher production in India. Recognizing that they also have an export ban, most of that higher production is going into stocks. So that's carried in as beginning stocks, increased their consumption a little bit as well. But again, a lot of that is going into stocks. Trade, global exports up just a little bit. That's mainly Pakistan there. And global ending stocks up also 1.9 million tons. That is, again, mainly India. Holding those that higher production, and the Philippines. U.S. rice balance sheet. Again, relatively small changes this month. Focused on the back year. That of course being the crop harvested last fall, currently being marketed. Seeing a lot of export strength. raised our exports, 1,000,000 hundredweight this month. That's all long grain and that's to Western Hemisphere destinations. And we've seen some consistent strength there, raised those exports a few times over the past few months. And with the higher exports, no change in supply, ending stocks are tightened up by the same amount, 1,000,000 hundredweight. And that tighter ending stocks from the old crop year just carries forward into the new crop year as lower beginning stocks, no other changes to the balance sheet. So that tightens up our new year ending stocks forecast by the same amount. No change to our price forecast this month. World corn production, marginally higher world global corn production this month. I have some offsetting changes in the Black Sea area. This is again mainly based on government data here, or really entirely based on government data. Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine production raised this month 700,000 tons. That's an area increase, again, based on government data from Ukraine. Russia, on the other hand, lowered 600,000 tons, also an area change there as well. One other country not listed on here, but worth noting, Zambia. Production raised 500,000 tons on both area and yield, and that is also based on government data. Global balance sheet for corn. Let's start on the old crop year, 2023, 2024. Trade up 1.7 million tons. That reflects higher exports out of South Africa, Russia, the European Union, and Uruguay. And tightening up ending stocks for the old crop year by 700,000 tons. That is tighter stocks, mainly in South Africa and Russia. So then carrying that into the new crop year, 2024, 2025, beginning stocks change nearly offsets the production change, so hardly any change in total supplies. Feed use up a bit. That is mainly higher feed use in Ukraine and the Philippines. Ukraine, of course, also that's consistent with their higher production estimate this month. Trade, global corn trade up a bit. That is mainly higher exports out of Ukraine, reflecting their larger crop, and also Tanzania. Higher exports from Tanzania to other sub-Saharan African countries. And on the other hand, offsetting this a little bit, Russia exports are down. Russia's corn export forecast is down based on their smaller crop. No changes in the U.S. corn balance sheet this month. So again, we'll get new information on grain stocks and acreage at the end of this month to be incorporated into July. Global soybean production. Main thing to talk about here, again, on the old crop, Brazil reduced Brazil's production forecast 1 million tons. And that, again, just like with rice, is reflecting the flooding in Rio Grande do Sul. And this is based on e-Mater information to the state agency in Rio Grande do Sul reporting there. No other changes to any of the other production forecasts for the back year or the new crop year. Global soybean balance sheet, beginning stocks tighten up a little bit. That mainly reflects that lower production forecast from Brazil, or by Brazil. And also some higher exports out of Paraguay, tightening up beginning stocks there. All of this is partially offset by higher U.S. Beginning stocks, which we'll talk about on the next slide. Other changes pretty minor, crush down a bit there, again, just reflecting those tighter supplies and ending stocks down, also just marginally. US balance sheet, again, we're going to talk about the old crop year, so the crop that was harvested last fall that's currently being marketed. Reduced our crush forecast 10 million bushels, and that mainly reflects lower domestic meal disappearance, partially offset by higher soybean meal exports, but net US crush lowered 10 million bushels, and that just raises the ending stocks by the same amount and carries directly through into higher beginning stocks by 10 million bushels, which again, with no other changes to the rest of the balance sheet, implies a 10 million bushel increase in next year's or the 2024 year's ending stocks. No changes to the season average market prices either. Cotton, again, similar story, relatively small adjustments overall. Back year, just truing up some data, government data. Small change for the 2024-2025 year. That is limited to Burma, and area and yield increase there. Global balance sheet. Main thing, again, small changes overall. Main thing I'll point out, focused on the 2023-2024 year. We raised Brazil's exports 300,000 bales, offset by reducing US exports by 500,000 bales. So we're seeing some shifting in export demand away from the US towards Brazil, competitive pressures, maybe some exchange rate effects there as well. But that is the main story on the back year balance sheet, and netting out is a small reduction, 200,000 bale reduction in global trade. For the 2024-2025 balance sheet, not much to talk about there. Small increase in cotton consumption, mainly just increases in Vietnam and Burma, which are partially offset by reductions elsewhere. US balance sheet, again, looking at the old crop year first. I already mentioned this, but we lowered our export forecast, 500,000 bales, just seeing that slowing export pace, slowing pace of exports. Also raised mill use just a bit, truing up to more recent data on US mill use. Net result being a 450,000 bale increase in ending stocks for crop currently being marketed, and that carries into a 450,000 bale increase to the crop for the crop that will be harvested in the fall. And then also implies higher ending stocks for that new crop, as well. Prices didn't make any change to our old crop year price forecast, but you'll see we made a pretty significant reduction to the new crop year cotton price forecast, down 4 cents a pound to 70 cents. And seeing a lot of recent weakness in cotton prices, and reflecting as well these higher supplies, higher ending stocks, increased stocks to use ratio, and some uncertainty about global demand. So let's move into sugar. A couple of things here to talk about. Starting again with the back year, 2023-2024. Production down just a little bit. Beet production reduced 50,000 short tons. That's based on processor info, lower recovery for the beet crop. Imports Couple things here worth noting. Mexico imports reduced this month, 31,000 short tons. We'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide where we go into more depth on Mexico. High tier sugar imports raised 47,000 short tons this month. What that actually reflects is is an attempt to account for imported molasses that are coming in and being processed into sugar. So it's not high tier in our traditional sense, but kind of falls under this high tier other category. So we're accounting for those molasses that are being processed into sugar. So that increase, that's showing up as increased supplies through increased imports. And but those increased supplies are more than offset by lower production and lower imports from Mexico to tighten up ending stocks by 34,000 short tons. So that's the old crop year. For the new crop year, beginning stocks down a bit, reflecting lower ending stocks for the past crop year. Cane production forecast down just a little bit, 32,000 short tons. That is, again, processor. That's a Florida, mainly a Florida change based on processor reporting. And then that this 47,000 ton increase due to processed molasses we carry through into the new crop year, assuming that nothing changes there and that those imports continue to come in at a consistent pace. So with that, ending stocks tighten up for the new crop year, and the stocks to use ratio comes in at 11.5%. Mexico supply and demand. For the old crop year, production raised a little bit this month. That's a bit of a change from the trend that we've been going in for the past several months. We're seeing just a little bit of recovery there. So that's good for Mexico. Exports down 170,000 metric tons, and that is, raising their ending stocks. And part of the motivation there is that we expect for the new crop year, production to rebound, but it's economically advantageous for Mexico to hold their own stocks, build up their own stocks from this crop year instead of importing at the high tier next year. So they'll carry over more of those stocks into the new crop year, reducing their need for imports. They're still going to be importing, but that should reduce their need for some of those high tier imports next year. And on that, their ending stocks increase 78,000 metric tons. Also regarding the U.S., potential exports to the U.S. For the old crop year, production of low polarity sugar is now at 6%, and that's down from 6.5% last month, and that's been decreasing pretty consistently over time as the higher value Mexico market makes it more advantageous to serve the domestic market. All right, let's move into meat and dairy to kind of wrap things up here. Starting with the beef production, shows up as no change for 2024, but what we actually have going on there is a little bit higher weights offset by lower marketings for 2024. And those lower marketings are carrying over into 2025. What we're seeing is some pushing placements and marketings into the next year, and that will so shifting from 2024 into 2025. So that's going to show up as an increase in production next year, and we also expect weights to continue to increase as well. So that's driving that production increase for 2025. For pork, small increase in production for 2024, just reflecting increased slaughter and higher weights. No change for 2025. Again, reminding everyone that at the end of this month, we'll have a hogs and pigs report, so we'll be able to reassess the situation at that point. Broilers up a bit. That's mainly higher weights there again for 2024. No change for 2025. And a small change for turkey. In terms of prices, steer prices, beef demand is holding up. Beef demand is strong, supporting cattle prices. So we raised our steer price 50 cents per hundredweight for 2024, and that carries into 2025, at least into the first quarter. What this really reflects is just a dollar increase in our forecast for the first quarter 2025, and then no change for the rest of that year. And then just some small changes on the poultry side for broilers and turkeys. Some recent demand strength there supporting the price outlook as well. No change for 2025. In terms of meat trade, our pork export forecast, we raised 100 million pounds this month, just reflecting recent data. We've seen some strength to several markets. That's really just truing up on the most recent census data, not necessarily forecasting any continued growth going forward beyond what we were already expecting. Broilers also truing up to recent trade data, seeing increased competition from Brazil and a little bit of a softening in the U.S. broiler export pace. And that's about it. Small change for turkey and no change in our beef import forecast this month. Now in terms of dairy, the main story on dairy this month and kind of similar to last month is just strong prices, both domestic and international. No change in production this month. No noticeable change. Some offsets there. A little bit higher cow inventories offset by lower milk production, netting out to virtually no change in milk production for 2024 or 2025. And then in terms of trade, product trade, on a fat basis, imports raised this month. That's mainly butter, and exports raised. That is mainly cheese. And again, strong domestic prices pulling in imports of butter and strong global prices increasing exports of cheese. Skim solids, 2024 reduced exports just a bit. That's a variety of skim solids basis products. But for next year, 2025, we expect competitive U.S. pricing and strong global demand, raising our export forecast for skim solids basis products, dairy products for next year. Finally, with dairy product prices, it's a pretty straightforward story, just strong prices and generally strong demand across all of the products, supporting the class prices and the all milk prices as well. All milk price raised for both 2024 and 2025, consistently above $21 this year and next. And again, that all is reflecting that strong dairy product demand supporting those dairy product prices and therefore the class prices as well. And that is all I have in terms of the major changes to the WASDE this month. Happy to open it up to questions and thank you all for attending. And for those of you joining online, thank you as well for attending, and we will see you back here next